getting results. This is News 6 at 9.
As part of our celebration of Black History Month, we've looked at the special contributions African Americans have made and continue to make.
Last week, Carolina Cardona spotlighted Eatonville, the first all-Black town to be incorporated in Florida, and visited Jackie Robinson Ballpark in Daytona Beach.
And today we're talking about the lives and accomplishments of some familiar names who've impacted Central Florida. Joining us today, Dr. Eric Smaw, an associate professor of philosophy at Rollins College. And thank you for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, we're so glad to have you. And, you know, we wanted to talk about some of those key figures in Central Florida history, like Mary McLeod Bethune and Zora Neale Hurston. Talk to us about, you know, how you talk to your students about how these figures help shape Central Florida history.
I think this is a great question. The first thing that I do is take them back to history and show the impact of figures like Mary McLeod Bethune, particularly in terms of education and education for African American women. So as we all know, she started a college here called Daytona Normal and Technological School that ended up merging with an all-male school and became Bethune-Cookman College. So people know Bethune-Cookman, but they might not know the history of how we got Bethune-Cookman. So that's a serious educational impact that she had on the history of Central Florida and on the lives of African American women in Central Florida.
Why is it so important for your students today and for all of us to know kind of how we got to where we are now?
I think this is also an excellent question. And I think if we put it in the context of what we see today, so we had a lot of coverage of the Virginia Governor Ralph Northam's blackface episode. If people don't know the history of blackface, then they don't know why it's important that we respond to it in the way that people did respond to it. But if we teach the history of blackface, then we can teach people that it wasn't just an incident of one person doing one bad thing at one particular time, but rather there was an entire cultural practice designed to denigrate a group of people, and that cultural practice was ubiquitous. And the effect of that cultural practice meant that people felt okay excluding others from education, from voting, hurting others using systems like the criminal justice system. So it's important for people to put that in context so they can understand how we break those systems down and have inclusion of all groups in the United States.
Yeah, and when it comes to history, it's learning the history and making sure we don't make those mistakes again.
Absolutely.
And so how can poor and working class people kind of overcome the racial divisions we've been seeing so often?
So I like to say that one thing we might do is take our cue from young people. So I like the fact that when you see young people, they're comfortable with people who come from different cultures, who are from different ethnicities, from different religions, who speak different languages. Young people celebrate globalization, inclusion, and diversification. So I think those things will help us see that the future will be fine, and young people are comfortable doing it, so there's no reason why we older people shouldn't also be comfortable participating with others who are different from us.
How do you talk to your students about, you know, the current climate, especially with politics right now and a lot of the polarization that's happening?
Good. This is a great question, too. I think that it's a difficult conversation. And in the United States, we often have problems with difficult conversations. But I tell them not to get caught up in the spectacle of it all. So if you get caught up in the spectacle, you end up participating in the polarization. America has had difficult times in its past. We'll have difficult times in our future. But at the end of the day, we're all Americans. And if one side is affected, then the other side won't necessarily be affected. If not directly, then indirectly, through things like tax programs that are designed to help people or other social services that are designed to help people. So if we help one another to move forward, then we're all better off. But if one side is hurt or both sides are hurt, then we're all worse off.
You mentioned in America we have difficulty with some of these conversations. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because we have an uncomfortable past. And it's easier for us to ignore the past as opposed to confront the past. And we have an uncomfortable present where we don't like to talk about this as a universal problem inside of the United States. But rather, it's easy for us to say, well, one person did something bad, so if we punish that one person, then we will have solved the problem. but I think we all know that the history of the United States with slavery or segregation or even sexism against women is institutional and cultural. So we have to deal with the solutions as institutional and cultural.
Well, how do you see, the climate in Central Florida as a region? Because, each region is different. And so when you think about the climate in Central Florida, things like the Groveland 4 decision recently,
Right.
like what's happening here? Is there healing happening? Is it getting better? Or, what other challenges do we face?
So I do think there is healing in Central Florida, and I do think things are getting better. So the thing that I like about being in Central Florida is that you have a lot of transplants from other places throughout the country. What's good about that is it forces people to come together, work together, and it forces us to have inclusion. One of the things that we find when you include people is that they'll eat together, they'll socialize together, they'll participate in weddings together and celebrate the graduations of their kids together, and then people will come to understand that we're all similar in basic ways. We all want our families to do well, we all want our children to do well. We might have different religious practices, but we all have religious practices. So I think I like Central Florida, and I think that the diversity of Central Florida is a change and a positive change. So I think we're doing better than we were historically.
And if there's one thing that you want viewers to do this Black History Month, what would it be?
I think I want viewers to sit down with a book, read something about a person or an event that you didn't know about, and then reflect on it. Yeah, maybe explain that to your families, maybe explain that to your friends. Open up honest conversations with people around you.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Smaw, great to have you.
Yes, thank you.
Hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.